if I had a video recorded for what I'm about to talk about, right? And Neural DSP comes out with this update that I'm going to put here on the screen. And I guess now I have to re-record all of it, except for the playing, I guess. God damn it. Let's go ahead and record this. What is up, guys? Welcome back to yet another video. My name is Franco Torres. I'm a guitar player based in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And today, I'm talking about the Nano Cortex. Is it worth it? And why this is funny to me is because I had, like I said earlier, I had done a video about this, talking about the stuff that I like about the Nano Cortex, the stuff that I don't like that much, and they come out with an update. And this update fixes half of my problems with the Nano Cortex, which is the fact that it wasn't able to receive MIDI signal, or at least it wasn't able to interact with MIDI changes in a very specific way. And the main one for me was the tap tempo. So I'm upgrading it as we speak, just so you can see I'm not, capping or anything. I'm updating it right now, and I'm really freaking stoked for it because it might, maybe, potentially solve a lot of my issues with the Nano Cortex, especially the tap tempo thing, because I mean, I use a lot of delays in everything that I do because I love the washed away type sound. Yeah, I'm really freaking stoked. This is constant updates bringing rather the things that are maybe potentially missing on it whenever you're getting it, right? Which is one of the things that I really like about all of these kind of like digital units, like the HX Tom, for example, right? That one has changed a lot since it first came out, what, 8-9 years ago. I mean, the updates that they keep adding and the stuff that they keep adding to all of these, to me, just make them future-proof, especially, future-proof when we're talking about the next 10, 15, maybe even 20 years. Because I mean, it's hard to see a world where, these aren't going to sound good since they already, freaking sound incredible. They're just going to get better from here, from where we're at, right? So that's, I guess that would be my point number one if we had to, have points in here. The fact that they are future-proof, I think, is really big, especially, again, the Nano Cortex has the sounds that are pretty much the same on the Quad Cortex. There's a lot of stuff that we still don't have, like compatibility between the Quad Cortex presets, or rather, those to some extent with the Nano Cortex, they operate on completely different ecosystems, I guess. But the sounds are the same pretty much. It's just they kind of like operate using the same, I guess, the same source, but on different ecosystems. So if you're expecting it to be kind of like the Quad Cortex Part 2, where you just bring the presets from here and just drop them here, that's not what this is. It's really not. That's not to say that it's not going to do the job and it's not going to do it well. It does still have the same sounds that we all know and love from the Quad Cortex, which is pretty darn neat, just at a smaller form factor. And now with the tap tempo, like I said, that really solves half of my issues with the Nano Cortex. Because like I said, I use a lot of delays, and I go from different patches to do different kinds of. I guess you're gonna see it shortly when I cut back to my past self, playing through, kind of like showing how I use the Nano Cortex, so you can kind of like get an idea of different ways to use it. Obviously, it's not a one size fits all, and ultimately, I'm just a guy on the internet talking about something that I like. So, if this influences in any way, that's cool. Hopefully, it's a positive influence more than anything, because that's really what I'm trying to do. So let's kind of talk about how I'm using the Nano Cortex. You already heard a little bit of it, but I'll just show it again. The A side, and I'll say this A orange, which I'm guessing is A1. I'm mainly just doing some clean stuff, right? So I'm mainly just doing that kind of stuff. They're pretty clean, pretty straightforward. And then on the B side of that, or B2, I'm using. So mainly I'm using it for that kind of stuff, just a little bit more ambient-y, and then I'll do some kind of like volume swells with it. I'm mainly using it for that kind of stuff, which I really like. But here's kind of like where it gets, I guess, complicated. But I'll talk about that in a bit. On the A side, on the left side, I've got two distorted channels, right? So I've got this one that's. And then I'm using the. That's pretty much it, right? So I'm using kind of like one for the rhythm and the other one for the leads. But yeah, it's really cool. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with it. Now with the new update, there's a bunch more stuff that you're going to be able to do just because of how they added the Midi. I guess the Midi program changes and compatibility with a lot of that other stuff. So I mean, it was always Midi capable, but now it has some more specific, very niche type things that a lot of users were wanting to get, and now it's going to be there, which is pretty cool. I'm going to add it here because I haven't read through the whole information of the update yet, but this video is not about the update. It's just about the Nano Cortex, and I guess, is it worth it, right? Obviously, like I said, I think it is, but who is it for? Because I think it's a very interesting product because it's kind of evolved in a really interesting way. When it came out, it was a capture device, and that was it, pretty much. It had a couple of effects into it, and it was a very simple, kind of like simple rig replacement that would do the job really, really freaking well. And then they added a bunch of effects, and now you can change the order on some of the effects and use them in different, situations and in different kinds of setups, I guess, within the Nano Cortex, which is pretty cool. So it kind of like got into the, I guess, playing field with something like the HX Stomp, which is really cool. And then from there now we have tap tempo, which makes it even better, and a couple other MIDI control features in there that are pretty neat. So I mean, if you're looking for something that's a replacement rig, right, a backup rig, this can definitely do that. Now be wary, obviously it's made to be used with other effects, I think. It's not going to do your very specific things yet. Just like the Quad Cortex even, because the Quad Cortex doesn't have like, very specific types of kind of like just textural delays or reverbs like something like the HX Stomp or the Helix does. And it's not necessarily meant to replicate, replacing 100% of the pedals in the market. That's not what they're about. But it definitely, I mean, it'll get you through pretty much any gig. It really will. But the Nano Cortex, I think, is definitely made to be used with other pedals. I mean, the concept behind it, right, is kind of like making it the brain of your, pedal board, and using it with other things and kind of like mixing and matching and just doing all these things that we as pedal owners absolutely love to do. So that's really cool. It's the form factor to me is the main thing. It's super small. It sounds just as good as the other stuff that I absolutely love. You can use it as an interface if you wanted to, which is really darn neat. And again, being able to have a couple different presets on board and not having a screen, I absolutely love. This is going to sound ridiculous, but I love that it doesn't have a screen. I love the fact that there's nothing really that can take, quite a bit of damage in the unit. In terms of like, your iPad falls from the stand, it hits the screen, now it's broke. What are you going to do, right? So it doesn't have any of that, which is really cool. And I really, really dig that. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but to me, that's an important aspect. I mean, even with the Quad Cortex, I've got plexiglass pretty much covering all of it because I don't want it to get messed up in a gig, right? We're stomping on them. We're fiddling with them. They're traveling in bags. The bags are traveling in places in your car were filled up with other gear. So transportation, obviously, aspect, it can hurt the pedals. It can, right? So like having screens on stuff like this can definitely be a hazard of any kind, which is why obviously you have to take care of it, right? It is what it is. But I'm stoked that it doesn't have a screen. I really am. It's currently upgrading. It says that it's complete. What does it say? A couple of minutes. Okay, it's installing. But yeah, I mean, I guess to kind of like maybe talk about a little, cons, I guess. Prior to today, which is July 24th, one of the cons was that it didn't have any tap tempo, and I guess good thing I didn't release that video yet. Another con I would say is kind of like setting it up is a little bit more complicated than it is to set up the Quad Cortex or something like the Helix. I think the Nano Cortex has some quirks to it that make it just slightly more complicated to kind of like figure out, in my opinion. At least setting it up with having everything just be as close to level matched as possible. I kind of wish that there was a kind of like some way to like copy the settings from one block to another on a separate patch. And by block, I mean like, for example, the amplifier or the cab. And I'm sure that's something that they're going to add at some point. It's just something like that would definitely be helpful. And maybe even something like a meter on the app so you can kind of like see where everything's at when you're playing. And when you're setting it up particularly, so you can, have everything as level matched as you can if that's something you're looking to do. In my particular case, I've been trying to do that. I've been trying to set it up like that for the past couple of months, and there's always something just slightly off, and ultimately it's probably a me problem because I have to, sit down more time with it to set it up to where it doesn't. I don't like to have, jumps in volumes unless I'm not going to do a solo, right? I want everything to be pretty much as unison as possible, and that's something that I've been working with the Nano Cortex to try to get it to there. And I'm sure I'm going to be able to. It's just it takes time, right? It is what it is. And the EQing portion definitely has a part on it particularly because of the captures and how they work and how they sound. All of these amplifiers have different EQ curves, which mean they're gonna sit a little bit better in certain mixes, right? That's just it's the name of the game. But I do think that the Quad Cortex is way easier to set up than the Nano Cortex in that regard. Now, that being said, I absolutely love the Nano Cortex. It pairs well with a lot of other effects. I haven't had a pedal that it doesn't get along with yet. Which is something that I can't say for the for the Quad Cortex. The Quad Cortex definitely doesn't get along well with one or two overdrives that I have laying around. The Nano Cortex so far gets along well with everything, reacts pretty well, super versatile. I mean, you can get any sound out of it, in my opinion. The latency and tracking on the transpose feature has actually gotten way better than it did when it first got out, which is a really good improvement and really cool to have. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think the Nano Cortex is worth it, especially like if you're looking for a B rig or if you're looking to, have something small and portable that can do the job for absolutely everything. And you're thinking like maybe, well, the Quad Cortex might just be too much for me. The Nano Cortex will definitely fit that bill. Keep in mind, it's not going to do all the crazy routing possibilities that you can do on the Quad Cortex, but it's not trying to either. That's the main thing, right? It's it's a perfect backup rig, in my opinion, to the Quad Cortex. It's also a perfect brain for your operation in a pedal board, depending on kind of like what kind of workflow you're trying to go for. Like I said in another one of my videos, the Nano Cortex actually got kicked out of one of my other boards just because the Thermion Freeway works way better for that kind of setup that I've got on that board and for that project that I'm using that for, which hopefully at some point I'll be able to talk a little bit more about it, but we're writing a lot of really cool music that we're going to be putting out at some point. But the Nano Cortex pretty much I use for more of the kind of like jazz gigs that I get, fusion-ish, I would say. Country gigs, it sounds particularly great for this kind of, that kind of like top 40s and top country hits, I guess. Using it a lot for that. And I've liked it so far. The only cons, like I said, were the fact that it didn't have a tap tempo. And level matching can be quite complicated on it. And I've gigged this summer at least over 15, 20 times with it. And yeah, I mean, if I would have to say actually one more con is if it gets too hot, it might freeze. I had it happen once and I had to unplug it and plug it back in and wait for it to boot up to actually be able to like change between the amps. That was pretty scary. That was pretty scary, I must admit. I thought it was going to be fried because it was hot that day outside. So I guess that's my only kind of like quirk that I've had so far with it. Other than that, it's worked great and it's been doing its job, so I'm really happy with it. Anyways, yeah, that was it for this video. Just thought I'd talk a little bit about the Nano Cortex, the features, what I think about it. Hopefully that helps anyone out there that might be looking for a Nano Cortex. If you have any questions, drop them down below. If you have any experiences for other people that might drop comments below, drop them down as well. I want this to be kind of like a community where people talk about the products and kind of like something positive, right? Hopefully, I'll see you guys in the next video. If you like this kind of format, consider subscribing, like, share, all that kind of jazz. We do appreciate it, and see you guys on the next video.